Hey everyone, I'm Joe and today I'm going to be talking about everything I read in June 2017. So in other words, my June reading level. Now, June was a really good month yet again. I didn't quite read the same amount of books as I've read the last few months, but frankly I don't care because it's about quality, not quantity. Although obviously if I can achieve both in 1 month, so much the better, because of course there's a million books I want to read and, well, I'm not going to live for a million years. So, you know, the more I can read the better. Anyway, that's besides the point. I read 12 books. They really were good on the whole. I read one novella as well, and I will start with the novella. Now that is an ebook which I read on my Kindle, and that is Everything But the Squeal from John Scalzi. Now this is a science fiction sort of dystopian type novel. It's about a guy who is in this world, and in this world you are essentially tested when you are a certain age, around 17, 18, I can't remember off the top of my head now, I should have probably made a note of it. And then you are essentially sort of assigned possible roles that you can do, you know, within that range. And this guy, he leaves it to the last minute before he sort of goes to see the appropriate sort of government official to get assigned a role. And unfortunately, the only thing he can get is to work in essentially a sort of a pig sort of slurry type sort of factory place, which is obviously, from his point of view, terrible, because, you know, working with pigs and their manure and things, it's just, he feels basically like a complete idiot and a failure. And I can't say too much about it because it is really short, but it discusses the idea of society, where people fit in society, and his place within it. And it's a curious little story. I mean, it's only about 50 pages long, but I actually, surprisingly, I enjoyed it. I mean, I really didn't know too much about it, but it really was quite fun, and it actually did make me think, frankly. And yet again, it's Scalzi. I mean, it's only the second thing from Scalzi that I've read, and I am impressed though, so, you know, I highly recommend it if you can find it. The first 2 books that I read this month were Steeple by John Wallis and Rig by John Wallis. This is the second and third book in the Kensterbig trilogy. I read the first book only last month. I reread the first book last month, and I will be doing a review of the trilogy as a whole in the upcoming few weeks, up to a month from now. So I'm not going to say too much now. I will say, however, that this is a science fiction dystopian set in a world where there are what's called officials and reals. Officials are almost human, but essentially they've got kind of nanite technology essentially in them, which makes them kind of sort of superhuman in a sense, although that particular term is never used. And humans have come to rely on them at one point too heavily, and now they've basically been at a bit of a war. The earth is devastated, and there's a lot of unknown about the officials, because officials obviously look completely human up until the moment that you actually talk to them and stuff. So everybody's a little bit unsure of each other a lot of the time, and the main character is indeed official, Kensterbig. So yeah, I did like these books actually, and the ending was good, but I'll say more in a separate video. Next up, I read Full Moon by P.G. Wodehouse. This is one of the Blandings novels. There are 12 of them in total. I've read either 5 or maybe 6 of them in total, so I've only got a few more left, frankly. And the Blandings novels are human novels, and essentially every single book, and indeed this is no exception, is essentially about the Lord Emsworth, who is the sort of upper class sort of English twit, essentially, you know, kind of fairly stupid and unobservant for most of the time, getting essentially confused and puzzled about what's going on around him. There are misunderstandings. There is nearly always a character pretending to be somebody else, often to steal something from the Blanding Castle, which is worth a fortune in these days. This is set in 1920s, roughly, England, although the year does indeed change, because the same as when the books are written. And the books are just fast, fun, and despite the fact that each book is relatively simple in and relatively similar in sort of premise. There's always somebody pretending to be somebody else. There's always like a mild love story in it, between one character fancying another character, but actually somebody else fancies them, so it's all like a bit of a minor love triangle. Despite that, I still greatly enjoy these books because they're just mad and frantic, and the writing is frankly fantastic, and I really enjoy these books. And frankly, I'm going to be sad when I run out of them, which the I'm going will be probably fairly soon. I'll finish them probably by the end of August, so which would be a shame because they are really fun. Next up, I reread Hull 03 by Greg Bear. Now, I read this only once before. That was about 6 years ago, so it's been quite a while now. This is a science fiction horror, and indeed, unlike the previous trilogy by Greg Bear that I read a few months ago, this was one that I absolutely loved because it is a weird, eerie sort of science fiction horror. A guy basically wakes up and is in this weird, spaceship basically. He's not really sure what he's on. It could be a space station, he's not really sure. And it's super cold. He puts his hand against the wall and it's so cold that some of his skin ends up ripping off his hand, because they freeze off. So he's in pain all the time. He doesn't know who he is really because he has no memory. He doesn't know what's going on. He meets this little girl who's just wandering around this place, or floating around this space station as well. He doesn't know who she is. It's all really quite mysterious and eerie. There are weird machines and creatures on this ship. He's not sure if they're like naturally evolved, or have they been manufactured? Are they part of the ship in some way, some sort of maintenance type thing? Nobody knows. And so he's at risk of death all the time. He meets other characters who are unusual to say the least. And I don't know, the thing about this book I like, because whilst it may not be the best book in some ways, I mean, if you read Goodreads reviews about it, some people have issues with it, and I have to agree, it has a weird eeriness about it and a sort of weird unknown factor, because the main character is just wandering around, and you, just like he, don't know what's going on, and you can never predict anything in this book. And there are some greater themes that start to become apparent as you go in, but even then you're not entirely sure of the ways they're going to go. And I just really enjoyed this book, actually, surprisingly, I mean, and I would recommend it if you want something a little bit unusual and you don't mind sort of science fiction horror. Well, mild horror really. I mean, that's what's officially classed as, but it's probably more like science fiction eerie horror, to be precise. Next up is The Game and Locked Rooms, both by Laurie R. Kings. These are the 7th and 8th books in the Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes series. There are 14 of them in total, so I'm now halfway. And I loved these 2 books the same as all the previous books. Obviously, each book varies in quality. I mean, actually, Locked Rooms I thought was particularly strong. The Game also was strong. The one before The Game was a little bit weaker, but that happens in series. There's ups and downs depending on the plot line and how the characters are developed at that point. Both of these, I can't really talk about them because they're sort of Sherlock Holmes type mystery. It's an alternative Sherlock Holmes, however, where in the first book he meets a young girl called Mary Russell, whom he realises he has an affinity of sort of thinking and sort of intelligence with, and they get on extremely well. And basically by this point they're now sort of working together on crimes and things, and they're just really well written, thoughtful. They're not super surprising in some ways. I mean, you can normally predict what's going to happen roughly, although there's always a good 1 or 2 twists that you really can't predict, or at least I can't, and I'm no mystery crime expert, so I'm relatively new to the genre, so to me it's unpredictable in some ways, but I really did enjoy them, and I would greatly recommend the series and the books as a whole. But I will talk about these in a sort of an overall sort of series overview type video in some way in a few months' time once I've read the remaining books, which yet again I'll be very sad once I've read all the books, because I'm enjoying them a lot. The next book I read is an ebook on my Kindle, and that is Raven Stratagem by Yoon Ha Lee. This is the sequel to Nine Fox Gambit, which was extremely popular on BookTube last year, and indeed I read and reviewed that book, and indeed I will be doing a separate review of this book in the upcoming few weeks, and I should be taking part in a live show possibly this coming weekend to do with this book as well, so I'm not going to say too much now. Suffice to say, the first book was it was science fiction. It's extremely weird. It follows this calendrical calendar system, which is frankly extremely hard to explain due to the fact I'm not entirely sure if I understand it or not. Actually, I know I don't entirely understand it. The book it's not the easiest book to read, and it's pretty much what I can hear from everybody else I talk to. Nobody finds these books easy to talk to because read, in fact, because they are so unusual, and the way they're written is odd by comparison to a lot of, especially Western books. But they are extremely good books. They're just weird, and you have to be prepared to sort of read something different, frankly. If you feel like a normal, sort of standard book that's written in a normal way, with normal characters and things, this might not be the book for you at the moment. When you want to read something different and a bit more out there, I would greatly recommend this book, but I'll be talking about it in a different video anyway, so that's it for now. Then I read Nemesis by Alexander Lamb. This is the second book in the Roboteer trilogy. I read Roboteer either last month or the month before, I can't remember which month now. And I'm not going to say too much about this because within a week or two I will be reading the third book, which I have on a shelf over there. And then I will be doing a trilogy review. So saying too much now would be frankly pointless because I'm going to be repeating myself. But suffice to say, this is a good sort of grand sort of space opera type novel. Not exactly space opera, but it's the closest thing to it. It's very dark in places, lighter in others. If you like Alistair Reynolds and Peter Hamilton, which as you can tell from there and there, I do a lot, then Alexander Lamb will be quite your thing, because he writes in a somewhat reminiscent way, but he does his own things. It's not like he's trying to copy their style and copy their ideas. Obviously not. He just, I get the impression that he's probably a fan of theirs himself, and that's obviously what's sort of developed his writing style himself by reading those kind of authors. But you know, I'll see. I mean, I'll probably meet Alexander Lamb in a few months' time at Gallant's Fest. I mean, I actually met him last year as well, so I'll be able to ask him a few things about the book as well. But you know, I'll talk about this in a separate video. But I enjoyed the book, and so far I'm enjoying the trilogy. Next up is Blackwing by Ed McDonald. Now this is a book that I got from the publisher, and this is the first ever actual ARC or advanced reading copy, because you can tell because it's actually got the release date on the spine, and this is actually a copy that you can't normally buy in shops. And I actually feel kind of proud that I've got a book like this, because I've literally all the advanced copies I've got of books before have always been the normal editions just a few months early. This is actually an unusual copy, and obviously it's a proper advanced copy. You can't buy this when it's like this when it's published. It has black edge as well, which is quite nice. Anyway, enough about the book in physical appearance. It is a fantasy novel. I think it is generally getting classed as grimdark. I don't personally class it entirely as grimdark because it's not actually as grim as what the back of the synopsis makes out, and indeed it's not as grim as what other people have said. At least I don't think so. If you like Joe Abercrombie, you may well like this. So far, the things I've read of Joe Abercrombie, they didn't particularly work out for me. So I was a bit like, I'll try it, because I mean, obviously I got it for free as well, and I'm really glad I did, because I loved this book. This was absolutely fantastic, and I got this 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Although I give quite a few books 5 out of 5 stars, I tend to be somewhat generous with ratings, frankly. Although I don't give tons of books, so it's still decent though. And I really enjoyed this book. It's about an area called the Misery, which is this weird sort of wasteland area off the edge of one area. There's some weird, like, sort of demonic lords, I suppose you could call them, on the other side. They basically permanently want to kill the sort of the human kingdom and the human population on this continent, and they have to come through the misery to get there. But there's this extremely powerful, devastating weapon. You get the impression it's some sort of like giant kind of super cannon type thing. You're never entirely told what it is, but that's kind of the impression you get. And this weapon has always sort of been a threat to them, because if they come, this weapon will just blast into the misery and just blast a big hole in the land and kill an enormous amount of the army that's approaching. And so, you know, it's useless for anybody trying to attack the kingdom. Now there's things going on, I'm not going to say in what way, and there's one character, Captain Royholt Galharo, which is an interesting name as well. He is a sort of mercenary. He's also a Blackwing, hence the name of the book, which is a sort of mercenary type profession, but with a slightly official edge to it, I suppose you could say. And he goes on an adventure, let's say, a sort. He goes into the misery, comes back, things happen. He's trying to investigate things to do with the canon and things to do with these sort of demonic lords. I'm going to do a proper review of this, so where I'll actually talk a bit more eloquently about it and actually probably make a bit more sense, frankly. But I greatly enjoyed this book and I would highly recommend it. Next up is Protect and Defend by Vince Flynn. This is the 10th book in the Mitch-Rapp series. There are 14 of them in total, although it's technically 15th and now 16th, although they weren't technically fully written by Vince Flynn, because he actually died during the writing of the last book, the 14th. This is basically the action adventures, action thrillers, I should say, where the main character is called Mitch Rapp. He's a CIA assassin, essentially, and essentially the one-man sort of wrecking crew against terrorists. There are terrorists planning to do things against America in each book, and he then has to basically foil them in a big action type way. They're predictable in terms of the overall outlook. The characters are fairly well done. Obviously there are flaws with the characters, and indeed the flaw would be the writing style at points. You know, I'm quite happy to admit that. But they're just easy, fun books to read in between other more sort of heavy duty books, basically more in-depth stuff. And frankly, that's what I love these books for, same as Lee Child. You know, these are great filler books in between other things, because they don't take great thought to read. You can just read them and forget about anything more in-depth and just, you know, have a bit of a rest from other stuff, frankly, which is good for. The penultimate book is Man Plus by Frederick Pohl. Now this is a classic science fiction book. Obviously it's part of the SF Masterworks, frankly, so they're all classic science fiction. And I read this as part of my ongoing project that I'm doing, which, as you may have noticed, I'm no longer doing videos about, because I realised basically I like doing the group, because I've got a Goodreads group about this, which I'll link in the description box below. But making videos about these books, for some reason I actually didn't enjoy making them, frankly. I don't know why, I just thought they were just sort of always frustrating and boring to make. So essentially I've stopped making the videos. I'll still do monthly group reads and things, and obviously I'll still talk about them now. But I'm not going to do separate videos about them anymore, because I just don't feel like it, frankly. It's just not working for me. Anyway, about the book. This is about a project called the Man Plus Project. Basically, humanity wants to colonise Mars, obviously, and they're essentially modifying humanity to be, well, as the name suggests, Man Plus, a sort of a advanced, weird form of humanity that can actually survive on Mars without needing tons of sort of advanced equipment to survive, basically. And it's about what that means for the one main character, Roger Toraway, when they start operating on him and they start to completely modify him. I mean, he barely looks human anymore. They modify his bone structure, his face, everything. I mean, he doesn't even breathe in the same way anymore. What does that mean for both humanity as a whole and for him as a person? is he still human or is he something more? It's a plus part. There is a sequel to this, but I'm not that bothered about reading it because I enjoyed this book. It does leave a few little questions open, possibly at the end, but nothing that significant, frankly. And I'm basically happy with how it ended. I mean, I'm glad I read this as well because Frederick Pohl is obviously a well-known classic science fiction author. He wrote lots of significant books, obviously this being one of the more notable ones, although there were quite a lot he wrote. And I'm very glad I read it. And for the record, I greatly like the cover because that is indeed a man plus, which looks frankly freaky. And when you read the book, you realise they really are very unusual by anybody's standards. And finally, the last book that I read was The Healer's War by Elizabeth Ann Scarver, which I don't have a physical copy of, so I read it on my Kindle. Now, this is a fantasy war novel, essentially. It is about a nurse in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and for a large part of the book, there's actually not that much fantasy in it, frankly, because it is about her experiences treating both American GIs and indeed the Vietnamese locals. Some people are perfectly happy with this there, some of them are not, and obviously there's a little bit of issues there. Her relationships with the soldiers, of course, because she's a female nurse, and there's an awful lot of men, so it explores that side of things, although not in any super deep detail, because obviously it's got a lot of things to say in a fairly short amount of time. And overall, I did like this, but I didn't love it. Basically, I thought this would be more fantasy than it was, but the fantasy element is essentially one of the Vietnamese patients that she treats for an injury is an old Vietnamese man. He has this weird amulet, and one day she sort of removes it during an operation on him, and she realises that something's weird going on because she can see the kind of an aura about other people around her, and that kind of shows their intent up. So if someone is violent, then there's lots of reds and blacks around them. If they are benevolent and helpful, then there's lots of greens and blues around them, and there's multiple other colours depending on what people are sort of thinking and what their emotional state is at the time. And events happen in the course of the book. Basically, she ends up being involved a little bit more directly in sort of stuck in the middle of combat, unfortunately, just to sort of try and stay alive and things. I don't want to give too much away though, because I mean it's not a super long book, but I liked it. I'm glad I read it. I just thought it'd be more than what I was getting, and I expected it to be more fantasy, and it wasn't. It was still good, but basically I would say if you read it, keep that in mind. Like, this is only mild fantasy in a few very light regard. Most of the time it's a war novel about what it was like in Vietnam. The one thing I did like about it is obviously the perspective, because this is not about a soldier's perspective, this is about a nurse's perspective in a situation like Vietnam, which I've personally not read about before. I obviously don't know what that kind of situation is like by any means, of course, and it's interesting basically for that reason. I mean, basically I liked it for that reason. That's why I marked it reasonable. For the fantasy aspect, not so much, but the introspective aspect was good, and I enjoyed it. And overall, I think it's well worth reading if it sounds like, if it sounds of interest to you to sort of explore that world. So that said, that is it for all of the books that I read in June. Overall, a fairly good selection of books. Some of them were better than others. Obviously, there's always a situation. But overall, I did enjoy all of them, and I'm glad I read all of them. If you've read any of these, or you would like to, then please leave a comment below, and we can have a conversation as always. Or if you've got any recommendations for me based on any of these, then please let me know as well, because I'm always open to new authors, new types of book, new genres, everything, frankly. Or if you want to, or if you'd like a suggestion from me, then also, please say, and I'll see what I can do. Although I'm not brilliant at suggesting books to people, despite being on BookTube. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.